So hello everyone and welcome. I hope you had a good Easter. Or you're still having a good break. That would be good too. So I was just saying that I keep an eye on my emails during these in case people can't get in. So if ever you are trying to get in and for some reason you can't, you can always send me an email. But theoretically, you should be able to you would have got in, there would have been an email come out with the passcode and everything, which changes every couple of weeks, maybe. Okay, so welcome everyone. And as always, some of you know, I always start with the questions that are in the coaching call, the submission form, and I'll say this, even if they only came in an hour or so before the session, but the earlier the better for me, because I can often prepare things if I know. I often have slides. I could just go rummage around and find, I have like about 100 different slide presentations in my laptop, so I can't do it on the fly, but I can usually find something relevant if I have time. And so anyway, we do have, hang on, let me check. We just have one, and it doesn't have to be anonymous, so we just have this one from Sonia. So I'm going to use this. Anyway, so always start with, what I was saying is I always start with the questions that are in the submission form, because I like to reward people for using the submission form. And also of course, there are sometimes people put the questions through who can't come live. So I want to make sure that they get an answer when they listen back. And so I'm going to use Sonia's question to talk about a couple of other things that happen a bit further along in the program, but are still worth talking about now. And just basically about bad dreams. This is something I hear about fairly regularly. Some tips on dispelling bad dreams. So the answer is kind of a difficult one. Firstly, in the beginning when that happens, so a lot of people find when they start meditating, or if they start like ramping up their meditation, or perhaps say in the case, I don't know for sure for some of you, but you might have meditated a bit in the past or have regular practice you do, and then you've come along to this program where we're really pushing this type of core mindfulness, just attention training, placement meditation, where you really just spend some time learning to place your attention on an object and leave it there. And that can cause you to, what happens is you become much more aware of what's going on in your mind. So previously, we can have a lot go on and we don't even really know what's happening. But what this type of practice will often do is make us a lot more aware of what's going on. And of course, not everything that's going on in there is especially pleasant. So that's just true for everyone. And that can flow over into dreams, absolutely, which is really kind of irritating. So there's, in terms of being woken up by this sort of stuff and then being stressed, right? You need to sort of get yourself back to some kind of baseline before you can go back to sleep. So I would always recommend doing the first like relaxation practice. I call it full body awareness. When you do it lying down, Alan Wallace is one of my main closest teachers. He calls it the infirmary. He says when you do that practice, it's the easiest, most simple of all the practices. And when you do it lying down, it's kind of like putting yourself, especially your mind, but putting it in like in an infirmary, like in hospital for a bit to get better, because you're in a completely relaxed, completely, it's as baseline as you can get. You're lying down, the body's completely relaxed. Any muscle tension that you feel you can release because you're lying down. It's not like sitting up. We always need some kind of muscular tension. And then you're just using the easiest focal object, which is simply physical sensations as you breathe. Anywhere you feel them, doesn't matter where. So if you can do that, what that will do is it will disengage your worry from like remembering the dream and what happened. it'll bring your attention back to something that's fairly neutral, which is just the movement of the body. And of course, you are actually intentionally trying to relax those muscles, right? And so it's a really good, I hope you're with me so far, because here's the difficult part. The trouble with doing these meditations to help you get to sleep is that you can, and often do, start to treat them as like, your mind and your body just remembers them as sleep preludes or, sleep techniques. And then of course you end up falling asleep during the daytime when you're doing the practice. So I would recommend let me back up. Go into that Shavasana, that lying down supine meditation posture. Okay, that meditation posture should be something that you only do in meditation, right? You don't lie around with your feet up on up on a couch or on your side or something like this. You choose a posture on your back with your legs out that is a meditation posture, even though you're lying down. So you spend a bit of time there until the body's all calmed down. And if you feel yourself drifting off to sleep, roll over, and just and let yourself go off to sleep. But do change position as you settle down. So so we've got one here, we're talking about making a comeback, right? And it's the same way with dreams as it is for other types of tension and worry, is that you've been distracted and caught up in something, and then you need to be able to release it and come back, relax, and get on with what you were doing, even if what you were doing was sleeping. Okay, so here's one that's coming back from the actual sleep. So you're still at the mercy of the dreams, of course. So I'll just warn you, these stages quite quickly, become quite advanced. So what I'm going to do is give you a quick rundown of it, and then I'll direct you into some books and some places to look for this. But dreams are such a great way to talk about almost anything really in terms of worry or rumination and so on. So are we okay so far? I mean, that's just if you're stressed, interrupt the stress, relax, and then get on with what you're doing. Okay. The issue of actually having those dreams, and I'm saying that those dreams will probably, if you've just really ramped up the amount of meditation you're doing, those dreams will probably just settle down a bit in a couple of weeks. So it's probably the meditation that's kind of set them off, if that's, if they've just increased recently, and they will just kind of die down as things settle in. So that you've got that. Now, I just want to take this opportunity to maybe launch ahead, so some of you who are at the beginning of the program get an idea of where we go with it. Because what's happening in a dream, if you think about it, all of your 5 physical senses they're not in play, right? Nothing really that you see, nothing that is coming through your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or body that's really feeding the dream. Those senses kind of shut down mostly while you're asleep. So actually everything that's going on in a dream is happening in the mental domain, right? It's not a physical domain, it's mental. And what's happening, of course, is that dreams tend to last 5 to 7 minutes, research tells us. So in a 5 to 7 minute dream, you can easily have an entire life. You could buy health insurance or life insurance. You could have, you get married and divorced. All this stuff can happen in like 5 to 7 minutes. And it all seems very, very real. And of course, it's not. None of it's real at all, because it's all just in the mental domain. It's all just coming up in this way. So one of the opportunities, and I'll run with this a bit further and say, what's happening there as you're just believing everything the mind is throwing up, right, just bringing up for you, is also happening to us in our everyday life. This is worth thinking about, that every opinion, preconception and ideas I have about people and things, right, they're all just in the mental domain. They're not out there in the things. They're in my mental domain. And I'm just as in a dream, I'm often treating them as real. And what happens is that if you don't kind of work to loosen that up, right? We call it cognitive fusion. This comes up quite a lot in the program, in I think module maybe 7 onwards. And what it's doing is that if I have a person who's constantly annoying in a particular way, right? And it's a really difficult relationship. Think family member, neighbor, colleague, boss, it doesn't matter. And what happens, it might be that other person thinks, this relationship's really problematic and I would like to change. So they actually try to change their behavior. The fact is, you won't notice, not at first, because so much of all of us, not just you, me too, all of our lives and all of our experience comes from the mental domain, and we just believe everything that it throws up at us, just as we do in a dream. And the reverse is also true. It's just really, when I'm working with organizations, especially with leadership, I really make it clear to people that if you're going to change the way you operate with any of your employees, right, you've got to know that when you change that, they won't notice, right? Why? Because they're still mostly living in their own preconceptions, and they've already decided all these things about you when you show up at work or wherever, and they just believe them, okay? You can interrupt or even drop something in the chat if you want to speak up. So that's what's going on for us. And what's interesting about this is that it's kind of, in a lot of ways, the dream analogy works really well, that in a dream, everything that's happening just in your mental domain is creating your entire reality. For a whole dream, 5 to 7 minutes of a lifetime, and then we drop back down into non-REM sleep and we have another one, maybe have 2 or 3 dream cycles over the course of an hour even, or a bit longer. So or a couple of hours, depends. Anyway, the point is, each time it happens, it's not like you remember the previous dream, like there's a whole new thing happens again, and you just believe everything. And in fact, I wasn't going to say this, but I will, just because just last night I was telling my wife Kirsty, I had a dream, and it was about doing some work back up at Chenrezig. I used to be involved at this place at a Buddhist center nearby for a long time. Anyway, we were there. I can't even remember what we were doing, but my wife and I, we were very heavily involved in the past, and we were walking away and we were leaving, and we both realized halfway sort of down the hill that we had to go back to take off our skates because we were wearing ice skates, right? There was no snow, it's subtropical. Anyway, what's interesting about that is that it's, at the time, but in a dream, I didn't question it. I just ran with it. I went, oh yeah, I got to go back and change. And I walked back into this building, sat down and took off some skates. And so like I say, the interesting part of that is that I didn't question it. I just took it to be real and I went ahead. And this is exactly how a lot of our waking reality actually works, okay? And especially the more rigid we are in our thinking, the more extreme views we have, then we can see all types of people, like all this type of religion, all this type of culture, everyone who goes for this football team, all these crazy ideas. We come up with these ideas about them, and those people have to fight really hard to break through our preconceptions, because we've already decided that they're smart, they're stupid, they're good at this and bad at that, and whatever. So why this is important is this cognitive fusion, which takes our mental activity as being real, is at the core of both of these situations, in the dream and in your waking life. How am I doing? Is this okay so far? I'm just going to stop. Is it okay? Any objections, questions, arguments? None? Okay. So you've got this same thing going on, all right? And which means that if you can undermine this same cause, this cognitive fusion, what you can do then is start to be much more flexible in your thinking and approaching the outside world, which is really helpful, and also start to lessen the power of dreams, right? Because just as your preconceptions and ideas in the outside world get looser and you're more flexible and understand, it's just, I just think like this, maybe there's alternative points of view and so on. It's the same can be in dreams, and you can actually get so good at it that you know you're dreaming. It's called a lucid dream. I'm sure you've heard, but you can train in lucid dreaming so that you can actually do it. And then you have all sorts of options. You can, interestingly, in the Tibetan, it's called dream yoga, and in the Tibetan tradition where they teach this, because it's a form of meditation, right? The more beginner way of approaching your dreams is to try to change them and avoid unpleasantness. And the much more advanced type of dreaming is to actually just let them let whatever happens happen. So if you get shot or fall off a building or all these sorts of things, the more advanced practitioners actually just let it all happen because they know it's a dream. So it's no big deal, right? Apparently it still hurts. I haven't done a great deal of this. So so here we've got this particular thing. It's called cognitive fusion. It's a mental function, and it takes all the things that are going on in your mental domain. It sort of, the term is reifies them. It makes them real for you. Keep in mind, it doesn't make them real for anybody else, only for you. Okay, it happens in dreams just as it happens in your everyday reality. So we've got this cognitive fusion. If it helps you, we often define it as mistaking the mental activity. So you mistake a mental image or a memory or a thought. You mistake it for the referent. So for example, I can drop a mental image of my car, right, very easily. So there's a mental image of my car, and the referent of that, the thing it refers to, is my car, which is in the garage. And they're different. This is really important, of course. The mental image and the car are different things. But what I do is I just fuse them together, and I treat my mental image as the car. No big deal, really. But if it's a memory, it's a very big deal. If I have a difficult traumatic memory, a memory is not the event. They're different things, okay? The event is the referent. The memory is the mental activity. They're different things. The mental activity exists. The memory exists, but the event does not because it's past, it's gone. And so the more that I mistake the memory for the actual event, the more I'm going to relive these memories. And I'll say it unnecessarily, right? Like we can relive them. And the thing that drives all of this, the dreams, the preconceptions, I'll come to your question in a moment, Fiona, your dreams, your preconceptions, even these traumatic memories or worries about the future, it all works the same way as this one thing. It's called cognitive fusion. And the more difficult, if you like, or the more advanced meditations as you go through this program, they get more and more targeted at loosening up this cognitive fusion, okay? And so that first, they will all do it to some degree, but they get better, they get more powerful at it, if you like. Once you go from that full body awareness to narrowing down the focal objects to different parts of the body, and then there's actually a practice designed for called settling the mind in its natural state, which explicitly takes on this cognitive fusion. So I'll just pause there for a moment and say, okay, as you're doing this, as you're unraveling this cognitive fusion, getting more and more kind of used to it and seeing it happen and being able to unravel it, then the more flexible you're going to be everywhere, including your dreams. And you really do stand a great chance of starting to develop lucid dreaming, which means when you dream and you know that you're lying in bed, even though this other wild stuff's happening, you know that it's all in the mental domain, right? If you would like to have a look at that, I just before I sat down, I called up a couple of people who are really famous for this, really well known. So the first one, his name is Stephen LaBerge. So he's actually a researcher. I've just put a link to one of his books in the chat here. The book's called just Lucid Dreaming, A Concise Guide to Awakening in Your Dreams and in Your Life. Stephen LaBerge is a researcher. He did a lot of work with Alan Wallace decades ago on this. And then, so that's a bit scientific. I got to admit, I haven't read his stuff. But I have it very highly recommended to me that I have a lot of confidence in. But I haven't read it because I tend to read the more Buddhist stuff, of course. And so there's another book by Alan Wallace called Dreaming Yourself Awake. So I've dropped that in there as well. And that's a really good book. It gives some brief advice about lucid dreaming, just in a secular sort of sense, but then it shifts over into this Tibetan idea of dream yoga and actually doing the work, okay? these are not beginner meditations, right? They're not. And you have to be consistent and really put in some time, but it's well worth it. So just to finish up with Sonia's question about getting rid of bad dreams, I just want to summarize all that and say, firstly, if it's waking you up and disturbing you, you need an entry-level thing to do, which is the same thing that you do to get rid of worries or rumination or these things that are causing you stress when you're awake, which is find the movement of the body, allow the body to breathe naturally, put everything into its natural state, and rest there until you settle back to some kind of baseline, right? And then you go back to what it is you were doing before. And if that was sleeping, great, try to roll over and go to sleep. Bang, number one. Then it's worth knowing that as you do more and more meditation, and especially as you do harder, more difficult, more subtle types of meditation, you start to dig this stuff up. So it starts to, there is little bit of uncomfortable period for a lot of people where things do come up and they can impact on your dreams. So that's just normal, that's okay. And the antidote, if you like, to that, or the kind of, I guess, the way you immunize yourself against that infection, of all this stuff coming up, is understanding how cognitive fusion works and getting familiar with unraveling all that. Okay, which is where I'd like to go next if there's no objections. But the reason I just finished with that to say that in terms of this question, I'm really aware what I've basically given you is a one really entry-level thing to deal with right at the beginning that probably most of you would be familiar with. Just find your breath, disengage, relax, try and go back to sleep. It's not very, that's the best thing to do in the beginning, but I understand you might be hoping for better advice. And then once you start to ramp up and take on the dreams themselves, you've kind of jumped to this kind of intermediate advanced area. You've leapfrogged a lot of stuff to get there. And in the meantime, it's just a little bit uncomfortable. And the best I can offer is to just kind of expect it to happen and work to really, really increase your relaxation. So when you notice this stuff bugging you, you get really good at just letting it go and relaxing back, and you get really good at that. What that's going to do is actually kind of help, I guess, turbocharge or help you slip into this thing where you can be aware of the dreams as they happen. And you actually, it's a dream, I'm not very interested. And you can actually just change it. Is that okay? That was 20 minutes. Anything about that before I go on more? Sonia? I can't hear you, but I can unmute you probably. Okay, Sonia, so I can see that you're talking, but I can't hear you. So, there.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
I can.
Oh, good. I've worked the thing. All right. Look, that was so helpful, Corey.
Oh,
and
good.
I've partially been doing a little of what you've been saying.
Right.
Yeah, I sort of caught on that might be a good idea, just to totally try and relax. And yeah, but this 5 to 7 minute dreams, they seem like they last all night.
No. It's pretty rare for a dream. Oh, yeah, they seem like they are. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but they seem like a whole lifetime. Yeah, it's not. They're only a few minutes long.
Yeah, I seem to have about 3 every night.
That's about right in the sleep cycle. The way it works. Yep.
Okay.
So if you well, I read through the books and see. I won't go through how you. There are techniques that can help you with lucid dreaming, and there are things like, for example, in case you're curious, things like in dreams gravity doesn't work. So if you set up a cue, for example, every time you do something, maybe you walk through a door or go down steps, and you kind of just jump, right? This is in the real world. You just jump. You got to be consistent though. Then what you'll find is in a dream one time you'll be walking down some steps and you'll jump and gravity won't work properly. And you go, then that's enough. You go, it's a dream. And what will happen, a lot of people will wake up, but when you get better and better at it, you can stay in the dream. And I'm talking this is science now. This isn't out there Buddhist stuff. And there are other things like if you pull on your nose will actually stretch. So you'll see quite a lot of people who do dream yoga will spend a lot of, they'll do this quite a lot. And that's what they're doing. There's just the habit of pulling your nose. So that in a dream, you have the same habits, right? And you just do this and your nose will stretch a bit and think, I got it. So there's some, you can come up with lots of these things. They're fun to do in retreat. I've done them in retreats. I don't do them so much in the outside world. And those 2 books are full of those sorts of ideas. Stephen LaBerge and
I look forward to reading them.
Alan's book. Alan's gets very Buddhist, of course. So if there's any secular people watching, don't go there. But yeah, okay, good. Well, that's helpful.
Yeah, that was helpful. Thank you.
Great. And so then, while we're on so I want to get on with this cognitive fusion idea. And I'll come back to it in just a moment because there's just 2 things in the chat. So Fiona's saying, earlier as I was talking, I was saying, if you change your behavior, you will have to wait for other people to notice, and so how long would it take for others to notice changes and drop their preconceptions? So this gets really hard. It depends, of course, on the person. It depends how strong their preconceptions are. It depends on the level of intensity that's going on there. So if there's a high level of intensity, and so think somebody who is really afraid of you, perhaps, or gets really angry at you, or the reverse is really besotted with you, or vice versa, because it goes in this kind of positive. Think Teenagers in Love or something like this, right? It will take, here's what it depends on. It depends on the intensity of that relationship. So the more intense, the longer it can take. It also depends on how radical the changes are, right? So if you sort of go from doing one thing to a complete about face, you probably get that much faster. The trouble is it can confuse the relationship. In an ideal situation, you would have both parties understand that there's all these preconceptions, and go, oh yeah, no worry, then they make a bit of an effort. In a perfect world, that's how it would go. So to say how long, if you were seeing someone daily or at work or something, I would certainly give it 2 weeks before I expected to see anything
noticed. Okay.
Yeah, anything reciprocated, right? Yeah.
Even though you might be implementing, change at a rapid rate.
Yeah.
It will still take time for people to join you. Yeah.
It will. And they will also think that it's temporary. Then they'll notice, and I think, oh, she was weird today, right? It won't be like, oh, she's making an effort to change this relationship. It'll be, and so that's especially in work situations that can be really hard, where the dynamic is already set up by your position and their position, and then it's really tough, to get through that. And of course, some of that you want to maintain the position, and sometimes maybe you want to break it down. You have to. But anyway, the answer is a couple of weeks for sure to see.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, no, it's great. This is a topic I'm really fond of, actually. Robin said, if others don't notice us changing, and if we're also unsure actually making progress, perhaps because we have to fake it till we make it, which is true, then how do we develop confidence that we really are improving? Okay, so here's one of my favorite also. So the biggest resistance I have in this program, and I have for years when I run the CEB programs, is getting people to do the diaries and the paperwork, and that's how you tell. I'll just read the question again, so those of you watching the replay. If others don't notice us changing, and we're also unsure we're actually making progress, because we have to fake it until we make it, which is true. Like, you have to fake it at first. It's cultivating it, right? Meditating, cultivating. Then how can we develop the confidence that we're improving? And the way to do that is to monitor yourself with these diaries. And it only takes a couple of minutes a day. It doesn't have to be big novels, although some people do write quite a lot. You can digitize them. In fact, I digitized most of the diaries. So you can do them online or electronically. And that's how you tell. And you look back and you look at it in terms of weeks, not so much, how's my consistency now versus 3 days ago, but you look over the weeks, which is why this whole program is 12 weeks long. because then at the end of it, you can look back and say, wow, you know, I have. And so there's all sorts of things come into play here, right? So one is the negativity bias. So we do tend to focus on and remember the things that did not go well, right? So then that skews our statistics, you know, that we're doing mentally. It skews it, so we think that we're maybe not doing as well as we are. I mean, take narcissists out of the equation, then you're that will tend to happen. So those diaries are really helpful to give you a more objective view that you can look back over. And also, once you identify particular situations or genres of situations, then you make little plans, because you've got that in the diary as well, the emotional episodes diary. If this type of situation arises again, I will do, you know, what will I do? And you write that down, and the power of writing that down more than doubles the chance that you'll actually do that, right? So writing it down is really powerful. So that's how you can monitor how you're doing and develop the confidence that you are improving. And you need to know that you will tend to have a negativity bias, which edits out some of the good stuff that you're doing. Yeah, unless it's all good, then maybe be a bit wary of that too, of course. Yeah, is that all right, Robin?
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Corey.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, and you're right. I see what you've written. I bet one screw up will set their new view right back to 0. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep on with this. That's right. So I've been doing. So let's take the other person out of the equation for a moment, and I'll just talk about me. I'm trying to change my behavior in relation to a particular person, situation, or persons, a group of people. So what I need to be focused on is my percentages. So let's say, the example I always give is, if I have a colleague or something, and I've had this problematic relationship with them, maybe I'm really sarcastic when I see them for some reason, I decide to make a change, right? And I say, okay. And now for a week or so, 10% of the time, I manage to say something constructive or not say something at all. I manage to pull off my new plan. And 90% of the time, I end up being sarcastic like I always have been. Okay. So I keep at it though. So another week goes by, and now I'm up to 20% of the time, right? 20% of the time, I'm actually pulling off my plan, and 80% of the time doing my previous habit. That is a 100% improvement over the previous week. So you need to be, your comment is a really insightful one. It's really good, because yeah, not only are the other people not going to necessarily notice yours, but your percentage might not be that high either, because you're trying to undo a bunch of habits, you know, that's hard to do. So yeah, it's a really, the best way to do that is to monitor it yourself. And the best way to do that is to somehow write it down and keep just a really brief log of how you're doing. And you'll notice, of course, some of you are only going to do the first 3 modules, which is fine. But when you go through the whole program, you know, we focus in for a week. Okay, here's how anger works, and here's the sorts of things that anger does. Spend this week focusing on anger episodes and see what happens. You know, now it's sadness. You know, now it's fear. And enjoyable emotions. We go through 4. So and that's what it's for. You start to really learn a lot about yourself. And I had someone do a course with me down in Sydney years ago. She was a neuroscientist. I mean, a neuropsychologist. And 18 months later, she was still filling in the diary. I mean, she's had a research background, but she was loving it. So I still keep learning stuff about myself. So she just kept filling it in. You know? So yeah, I really struggle to get people to do it. But I always go on and on about how helpful it is and how important it is. But you know, there's only so much I can do. Do keep in mind, if you do the diaries, I would recommend never showing anybody, you know, don't have a plan to ever show it to anyone, you know. And after a month or so, if you think you've learned some stuff, then burn it or whatever you need to do. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, this is a lot of, I like questions where it brings in the whole program, how the whole program works. And so far we've run this whole kind of gamut of really the entry level stuff. It's like when people come to me strung out, anxiety, depression, and so on, what do? We train them in basic mindfulness relaxation, so that when they notice they're emotional or stressed or, you know, whatever it might be, they learn to disengage, find the breath, relax, you know, and get back on with what you're doing until you're distracted again. then we get really interested in the mechanics of distraction, the mechanics of emotions, and so on, right? And then the more you learn about that, the more you learn about how emotions work, say, and more complicated, subtle things like cognitive fusion, that understanding that understanding won't usually be available to you when you're distracted or stressed or emotional, right? And because our focus narrows when we're emotional, and that's what the mindfulness training does. So training, explicitly in mindfulness and introspection, as you are doing, what happens then is all that new information about anger, about depression, about rumination, about cognitive fusion, if you go that far, and so on, all that information starts to be available to you, even if you're stressed, even if you're strung out, because why? Because you've done this memory training, this mindfulness training, which means that that's all happening. And then you've got all these, your options just become exponentially bigger, because then you can start to question it. So there's somebody and they're doing something I don't like, and this is humans, I'll tell you. I mean, it happens to me too. When somebody's doing something that I don't really like or object to, the first reaction is as if they're doing it to annoy me. And I know Will's here. I was talking about with Will, I think at some point in the past, like when I'm walking my dog, who's a really, really good dog and old, she's not very aggressive, she's 13. When she suddenly smells something and just pulls off, and I feel the lead kind of pull me away, I take it just for an instant, I take it personally. I feel as if the dog is doing it to me. Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know. That's what it feels like. And I think it probably does to most people. Like that's what happens. And so it takes a moment. And when I say a moment, it depends on where you're at. I'm happy to say for me, it takes less than a second. I can unravel that very quickly, because I know that's not what's happening. If you work with children, it's the same thing. They might play up, but there's all sorts of reasons why they're doing that. And at first, it might seem like they're out to get you, whether they're your own children or students, whether you're a teacher and so on. That there's that instant where it seems like they're out to get me. And sometimes people are. So I'm not suggesting that you put up with it if they are. But a lot of times that's what's going on. And this again, I'll say it again. This is cognitive fusion. Okay. So the dog's pulled on the leash, right? Because I want the dog to walk with me and at my pace and whatever. And so I'm walking along and the dog stopped doing that. And then I believe, with no basis in fact, I believe that the dog's out to get me. Yeah. I believe that the dog's trying to annoy me. And it's ridiculous. It's kind of funny. But then you can sort of unravel that really fast and go back to it. So then you can start to do that with, as we mentioned like earlier, when you have these relationships you're trying to change, or your behavior you're trying to change, and then you see these things in the other people, you get an initial reaction that is going to be, this is all about me, right? And then if you can, your mindfulness training and introspection will help you relax and run and just stay calm through that. And then you can actually have a look and see, well, what's going on? And it might be they really are out to get you and you need to push back. And I'm cool with that. I push back too. It might be that maybe I've done stuff in the past that set them off, or I might be partly responsible for it, in which case I will start to change what I'm doing. And as I change what I'm doing, I'm going to understand that the other person might not notice yet. So what I understand that, I mean, how long have we been here? 40 minutes. I understand that's quite a lot of information in a short period of time. But the thing that you can have access to this and much more, you have access to all that information if only you do the mindfulness training. If you do this training in introspection and relaxation, so that you can focus, so that you can stay relaxed, deepen your baseline of relaxation, and then everything you learn is available to you even when you're stressed or emotional and so on. Okay, and yes, I saw Lorraine, 2:30 a.m. in Calgary. Hello, welcome, good morning. And so so that's where we're at with all this material. Like, we've covered quite a lot. I'm really hoping it's making sense. Tell me, Adam, you're newish to the program. Is it making sense what I'm saying?
Yes, that's all making perfect sense. That's very good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So then, so that's where we're at. And so I'm going to come back to this thing that, and remember this all started with dreams. So like this idea of cognitive fusion, because that's what's driven all of this. Cognitive fusion, I've had developed this idea that because the dog's not doing what I want, now I have this idea that she's doing it to me. My dog's kind of trying to upset me, and I believe that, right? So that would make, if you know how anger works, for an example, that's a great anger trigger. It's not failing to meet my expectations, right? Thwarting what I'm trying to do, getting in and some sort of obstacle to what I'm trying to do, which is probably walk the dog, ironically, but this is how crazy we can be, that it's interrupting what's happening to me. And then I that's an anger trigger, whereas, so, and then you've obviously getting angry at the dog for just popping over and sniffing something, which is pretty much the nature of dogs, is counterproductive, And so then I have some options here, right? So then I can think, well, actually, she's my dog and I have to look after her. And I really want her. Dogs like sniffing. I like walking, dogs like sniffing. But I'm out for her. So I stop. And with concern for the dog, now we're talking about compassion. So I'm bringing in more of the mindfulness, like more of this program that comes later. So then you actually very intentionally bringing up a concern for the other, in this case, just my dog, but bring up a concern for another, which is compassion, kindness, which we also know is really helpful for our mental health. And it comes back to having the mindfulness training, because when anything sets me and you and all of us off emotionally, the world reorients itself to be about you, right? When I'm sad, angry, happy, whatever, the world becomes reoriented. It's about me. That's what emotions are for. It's a short-term solution to something that's right here in front of me. That's what emotions have evolved to do, deal with that situation. So that's really hard. Well, that can be problematic if you want to develop these things we know are really good for our mental health, like kindness and compassion, because now I need to shift my attention back out to the other, which isn't going to be natural, because when I'm emotional, it's about me. So the thing that will interrupt all that, right? The thing that interrupts it is mindfulness, is attention training. And now I'm going to very briefly explain why. And this is fun because now we're going right back now to the beginning. Think about a meditation session. Any meditation session, what are you doing? Well, any mindfulness training session, what are you doing? You are trying to, realistically, let's be realistic, you're really trying to notice when you're distracted and correct for it. It would be nice if a meditation session in the beginning really involved sitting down and being absolutely focused for 20, 30, 40 minutes. But for most people in the beginning, that isn't the case. What you're really trying to do is notice when you're distracted and correct for it. So relax, bring your attention back, breathe naturally, and away you go. Okay, that's what's happening. I would say that, let's be generous, 90% of any distraction is actually cognitive fusion, is mental. Okay. This can be I don't want to get too caught up in this. My point is this: the mechanics, like the kind of mental, cognitive kind of mental mechanics of a distraction when you're meditating, right? That distraction is essentially the same mechanics as being triggered by an emotion. Your attention's captured, and then your reaction's automatic. Okay, so let's come back to it. Somebody who's, my neighbor is really annoying, let's say, and I see my neighbor, before they do anything, I already have these reactions and expectations about what they're going to do and who they are and what they're like and so on. And then we can push this even further, as we did right at the beginning, and say, let's say I'm in a dream, a non-lucid dream, and that neighbor shows up, then same thing, all these ideas and opinions about that person drive everything. Okay, cognitive fusion. They distract me, and the emotions distract me. So the more time you spend, or the better you get at noticing you're distracted in a meditation session, and not just noticing, but then having a plan, which is relax, right? Release, reset your attention, right? Then what you get from doing those in a formal session, what you get in the outside world is now you notice when you're distracted, which is to say emotional. Not only that, but you've cultivated a way you react to that, which is to what? Relax, release, and reset. So now, and so an example might be, the dog does this thing and I get a little bit annoyed, and then I unravel the whole thing because I know that I am, I'm distracted and emotional and so on. So I bring it back. I can go even further and develop all this kindness, compassion, and so on. So the point being that training, that really simple relaxation training, is the key element that can not just unravel and help you through some unpleasant things. It can start to rebuild relationships or improve relationships, professional and personal. It can start to really improve your mental health, because not only will you understand what's happening to you, but you'll understand what's happening to you while it's happening, which is a whole other ball game. And some of you would have probably had this experience, of course. And that's why so much of my approach, like I'm really big on doing the practice, but also learning. I try to teach people things because I know that if you understand how these other things work, you're going to have access to them when you're emotional, which is of course when you need them. And all of this is just, and there are these really, the more deeper you go, the more you kind of, you get these kind of concepts and ideas that really unravel the things that are causing you stress and distress, lack of sleep, difficult relationships, and even bad dreams, literally. So that's how, in a nutshell, all of this kind of works from the most simplistic down to a fairly subtle level, which is this sense of cognitive fusion. Okay, that was quite a lot. I expect I'll get some emails about this in the next few days. So before I summarize it all up, is there anything else while you're here? Adam, Fiona, Kristen, Lorraine, Robin, Sonia. Well, Sonia's already asked a question. Not only that, she did it through the question submission form, which is my favorite. Nothing? Okay. Yeah, no worries, Lorraine. Yeah, 2:30. That's impressive you're here at all. Let's not call it late. Let's call it extra, extra keen. So the one of the reasons I've this week, some of you know, like Will, you've seen it, and Fiona, some of what I end up talking about is just conversations that I've had during the week that either impressed or annoyed me, or just found interesting, actually, can be had. And so a couple of times this week, I've come across, both through the program and in the outside other work I'm doing, a really common thing that I hear a lot. And I want to be as kind as possible about it. But I hear it all the time. So if this is you, don't worry, you're not alone. This is really common. And it comes from a very psychological based or new age based version of mindfulness, which of course is not the type of mindfulness that I am teaching, because I was trained very traditionally in Tibetan, of course. So the people sort of say, well, I really struggle to meditate, or meditating is really hard, which is true. So that makes you normal, right? So I just try to be more mindful in my daily life. And that's how that's my mindfulness training. I also hear things like, oh, I just walk on the beach where it's really nice, which you can do here on the Sunshine Coast. So that's okay. There are a few things I need to say about that. If you think, one is, in terms of the program that we're doing right now, you should lower your expectations by a good 60 to 75% lower. Okay, you're not going to be able to do this stuff. If I had people paying full price for this program, and I spoke to them and they said, I'm not going to meditate, I wouldn't sell it to them, because I want to see people get results. So so please, at least lower your expectations. There's all this information about emotions and things there that will help. It's great, but lower your expectations, because you need to train in mindfulness and introspection, right? You would have seen by now, I hope, that I think the probably first week, where we define mindfulness and explain how it works and combine it with introspection. You need both of those, and both of those you do the training because it spills over into your everyday life for free. When people say, oh, I just try to be a bit more mindful, which I'm all for, I'm not against it, but my analogy for that is always like, if you're really unfit, right, and you start getting off the bus 2 or 3 stops early and walking the rest of the way to work, you're totally going to get benefit from that, right? Is it going to make you fit? Well, no, it's really only going to help because you're kind of unfit. At some point, it's really not going to be much exercise at all. So it's okay, but it's, well, it's just it's really not going to take you very far. It's certainly not going to unwind cognitive fusion and roll back your emotions and all these kinds of things. It's because the training is just like physical fitness, where you swim or do weights or run or whatever, that the benefit you get from doing that exercise just happens to you in the rest of your life. You just have it. You have to do anything to get it. And the same is true here. It's exactly the same. You do the training, increase your mindfulness and introspection, you will carry that with you everywhere else, right? So you won't need to try to be more mindful. You just will be. You will notice more things. You'll get it for free. So I just want to be really clear about that. Just, that's okay if you don't want to meditate and can't do it, it's okay. Just the sorts of results I'm talking about from a program like this probably aren't available to you. And that's why we start, I'm sorry to be harsh about it, that's why we start with a 10-minute session. So you can always go back to a 10-minute relaxation session and do that. You can do that for 12 weeks, 6 months, as long as you like. But that's where it's at. You always have this 10 minutes. And in fact, I have other materials out there where it's 5-minute relaxation practices, which, get in touch with me if you want them, if you don't have them already. They're free anyway. So, and that's important, and that's not any one person. This week I've had this come up several times. So here's a great, and I've given the same answer. So there it is. So just to quickly pop over to the comments. I have a hard time meditating when ideas come to me that need to take action, otherwise I'll lose it. Yeah, so the way around this is to understand firstly, if you don't have 10 minutes to put aside to do this type of training for to look after yourself, to look after your own mental health, it's a bit of a problem, right? You need to find 10 minutes. A lot of people spend 10 minutes a day brushing their teeth. So you got to decide, is your own mental health and well-being as important as your teeth? Yes or no? And maybe the answer is no. I'm all right. For me, maybe it's more important than my teeth. I really need to see a dentist, actually. Anyway, so you got to think about it like that. And if that's the case, then if you've got 10 minutes to put aside, this concept that there are ideas that I need to take action to right now are what we call distractions. They're to be released, ignored, because you're doing training in mindfulness and introspection, which is going to help you everywhere else, right? And the more mindfulness and introspection training you do, the more aware you're going to be of all the ideas and thoughts you have. And there won't be this issue of always needing to write things down, because your memory and your working memory capacity are all going to be better because you took the time out. So it's funny, if you were, I know you're in Calgary, Lorraine, because you wrote this. So I happen to be in quite a warm part of the world, and I like to swim laps, to get physically fit, although I haven't for weeks. Anyway, my shoulder's busted. So the point is, I know that the physical fitness is really helpful. And it's not like if I have ideas about my PhD or some work or something that I have to do, I can't stop and write them down or do something about them, because I've set aside 30 minutes where I'm going to swim 30 laps. So why is it different to meditating? It's no different meditating. So you got to think, and yes, and so these are things I've heard a lot before, so I'm not trying to single anyone out here. So yep, Lorraine's saying I spend all day meditating, mindfulness, affirmations, tapping, visualization, etc., and during the night. Okay, so here's the problem we have. I'm presenting a system, right, that works, a system that works in a particular way, and it needs a particular approach. It's this type of mindfulness. So the type of mindfulness training I'm talking about requires 10 to 15 minutes a day to do the practices that you have recordings of that I've made available for free, right? And mindfulness, that means remember that it combines introspection. Mindfulness that you've learned somewhere else, right, from that's different to this, is you're free to do it, but that's not a substitute for the approach we have here, right? So if you're not following this approach and trying this type of mindfulness and so on, you know, then you're not doing the program. So please lower your expectations. And things like tapping, sure, if you want to do it, I've read the research on that. So it's certainly not something, I have real issues with it, actually. I know that, yeah, no, actually, Lorraine, I know that health, all these other health issues, totally an issue. What I'm saying is that whatever type of things it is that you're already doing for mental health and whatever it might be, if you want to try this program out, you need to do these in addition to that, you know, and that means if you have a, I don't know, like Goenka, Vipassana, mindfulness background or something like this, and you want to do their practice, no worries. Just make sure you also do the practice I'm talking about, because they're different, right? They have different goals in mind. They come from different sources. They've been tried by different people. Make sure you do this as well, okay? Think about meditation as cultivation, because that's actually what it means. What are you cultivating? What are you habituating? So definitely, excuse me, I have a new microphone. It's really hard because I do wave my arms around a bit. It's really hard not to hit it. Anyway, so yeah, it's okay to do these extra stuff, but well, actually, your comment about healing from the inside out is exactly it. These are methods and techniques that come from a straight up, like very authentic contemplative background. I mean, I learned these in Tibet and I studied these in Tibetan, and I have really heavy teachers taught it to me. I'm sorry you stuck with me, to be honest. And then, of course, a lot of you know, research-based stuff around emotions, which is also 50% of my my day, reading research papers and writing research. So I'd like to finish with, given your comment there, I want to finish with this then, because I feel as if I've really unloaded tonight. For people who are new, I know some of you will have heard a lot of this before, but I'll present it this way. And I'm going to say this. This is what you can expect over time if you put this method into practice, okay? And will you get it from other ways? Yeah, maybe. It might well work with other techniques and other traditions. I don't know. I tried a few and I never stuck with them, because I liked this one. But here's what it really is literally designed to do. Let's come back to cognitive fusion. And my apologies if I'm running 2 courses simultaneously. I think I did this on last Tuesday night. I can't remember. I'll finish with this. I've got 1 minute, see how I go. We posit from this perspective, the mind as a self-healing system. So think about it like this. If I cut my finger, for example, and you know, and I go wash it and put a Band-Aid on it, the finger will heal itself. I don't do anything, right? In fact, the more I get out of the way, the faster my finger will heal, right? But you know, if I go down and I pat my mangy dog, you know, do some gardening, clean the toilet, and these sorts of things with my cut finger, then it'll get infected, right? It's like, and then maybe I rub dirt in it and these sorts of things gets infected. I could lose my finger, my hand, my arm, conceivably die from a small little cut on my finger because I didn't get out of the way. You know, I did all this other stuff that got in the way. So I'm going to bring this back to cognitive fusion. I know, Lorraine, you actually, you know, you missed the first half of this, but if you go back and watch it, it'll make sense. That's what cognitive fusion will do. So the second somebody cuts, let's take a really banal example. Someone cuts me off on the highway, right? And I get really angry. And then I think about it later. And it makes me angry again. And then I think about it more. And then tomorrow, then it interrupts my sleep. Someone who cut me off, who for all I know has I don't know, their wife's in labor in the passenger seat, and they're trying. For all I know, I don't know why they cut me off. But I invent this whole thing that it's, I run with this idea that it was done to me, and all this sort of stuff. And so then all this anger just hurts me, right? It's like rubbing dirt into a wound. And we have so many of these little mental wounds, some of them small, some of them are really big, and they're very serious and they're very real, and I'm not belittling them. But what happens is that we don't, we never disengage from them. We believe all our thoughts and ideas about them. We let them trigger us. We let them come back, and we treat those memories of them as the actual event, and so on. And what it does is it causes us all this extra stress and harm. What I'm saying here, and you can try this for yourself, and I have in plenty of my, let's call them people. I don't like the word student, but people I've worked with over the last few years have also found is that the more you can do this type of meditation, what it is, it becomes a process of subtraction. So for 10, 15 minutes a day, you sit down or even lie down. So, I mean, you can lie down, as you know, and do this. Do it, pick a posture, go back and watch that class if you haven't. And what you're doing is actually, whenever you notice the mind's been taken off on all these things, right? You notice it, you let it go, you relax, you release, and you bring your attention back. And if 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1 second later, you're off again, it doesn't matter. It only matters that you notice it's happened and that your response to it is to relax, release, and reset your attention, right? So people don't like it because they lie down and go, well, I'm not good at it. Yeah, you're not good at it. It's true, right? In the beginning, no one's good at it. So, but you sit with it. And what's happening now is instead of all these little sort of things pulling you off and like cognitively fusing and running with all these ideas, which are basically the equivalent, of rubbing crap in a cut on my finger. It just keeps making the mind more turbulent, more turbulent, more turbulent. And my habit and my what I'm familiar and habitualized with is to keep stirring it up, right? I'm not familiar. I haven't habituated a sense of actually letting it go and just coming back to something neutral like the breath. Okay, so I can't think of anything more important to people's well-being and mental health than being able to do this. Like, there isn't anything more important. So if you're cutting straight to the core here, noticing that I'm distracted, which is the same as emotions, as I mentioned, and releasing it, then the meditation practices that you go through in this program and work with me wherever, they start off very simple and very easy, and they get a little more subtle. And what's happening as you say move to more subtle areas of the body or even away from the body altogether, it's almost as if the amount of mind that you're kind of leaving alone, you're just leaving it alone, right? Kind of gets bigger and bigger, if you like. It's not exactly true. It's a nice metaphor though. So, or to say this, but you're leaving the mind alone more and more and more as you focus in onto these more subtle focal objects, right? And the more that you get out of the mind's way, the more that you can just leave your attention here while the mind does its thing, the more it will actually heal itself. The mind is a self-healing system, same as the body. And this contradicts almost all of psychology. I'm very familiar with psychology. It contradicts that we always have to do something. We have to do something. And now we come along and say, well, actually, for more than 2,500 years, people have discovered and run with this idea that if I actually learn to do less and less and less, my mind actually fixes itself, because fundamentally it's kind of all right. It's all this other stuff I'm doing to it that's a problem. So if your goal, or if your technique is just to spend your days trying to be more mindful of all the cogitation, it's not like it won't help. It'll help. But what we're talking about here is really training to let the mind get out of the way and let the mind heal itself, because the question shouldn't be, what do I need to do to heal myself, right? The question really is, what am I doing to get in the way? As that's the question that doesn't get asked in our society, in our culture. But it's the question that you need to know. And if you look at it and you try this and you decide actually that's not true, at least you tried it. That's okay, you know for sure. But unless you try it, that question remains unanswered. And in fact, for most people in 21st century planet Earth, the question remains unasked, let alone unanswered. And I'm telling you, it's the most important question you could possibly ask yourself in terms of trying to develop your own mental health. and just happiness. And the same thing comes true if you do, we've got this idea of genuine versus different types of happiness. Same thing. What do I do? What do I need to do to be genuinely happy? The question is, what do I need to stop doing? Right? What do I need to stop doing? And here's a hypothesis for you to try. The more time that you can actually spend in your natural state, so the body resting, the breath flowing naturally, and your attention just resting on the, say, movement of the body, for example, the more time that you can do that, whether it's 1 second or 5 seconds, the more you're going to notice that that's really pleasant, right? It's not boring. It's actually not, it's quite difficult to do. But it's not boring. It's actually really pleasant. Yeah, and that's the problem. We're addicted to this idea that I've always got to do something or I'll be bored, and being bored is unpleasant, and that I'm not contributing to the GDP. All right. I do like to finish with a bit of sarcasm, so that was good. So thanks, everyone. I think I probably went over a few minutes, but I appreciate your time. And I'll see some of you tomorrow night, I think, I will for sure, the advanced course, which is a lot of fun. So if that sets you off now and you're really thinking, you have a question submission form, you have a Facebook group, you can ask the questions in. Do it now, it's okay. Give us a week to sort of to talk it out, and we'll try it again. But if you're not trying the practices, please, please, please try them out. Just that 10-minute relaxation one. Don't even worry about the 15-minute ones, because that is you getting out of the way of your mind. It is you actually asking the question, what do I need to stop doing to get better? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, stay safe. Absolutely. And don't forget, you can get in touch with me at any time. All right. Bye.